Okay, what I'm going to show today is how do you use the Catalina API for Dynamics SL, or any API for that matter, and customize and transform its output or its input to be able to go ahead and meet whatever you need. So if you've got a custom system that's out there that you need to be able to have the API look in a particular way, because hey, the Catalina API for Dynamics SL, it's bringing data back in particular structures, and those structures then need to be dealt with, but sometimes those structures aren't understood by existing systems. So what we can do is use Catalina Integrator or ctIntegrator to be able to transform that data into anything you want. So I'm going to first I'm into ctIntegrator, and I'm going into mapping scripts, and I'm going to create a new script. And what a script allows you to do is it allows you to take data from a client, and that client passes data into ctIntegrator. ctIntegrator then can use that data and make calls out to get additional data from other systems, as well as then transform both the data that comes from the client that's calling the API, as well as other systems that are out there, and then push it to a destination. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's first give this a name. So I'm going to just call this demo customer customize API call, because what I'm going to do in this is I'm going to retrieve a customer from Dynamics SL through the Catalina API, and then transform it into a format that I want, that I can then use for, say, Dynamics CRM or Salesforce or a mobile app or whatever, and into a format that's specific to me. So I'm going to be retrieving data from an SL customer, and let me just set up the call that we do. And this is pretty simple to do. All I'm doing is I have a URL that is pointing to the Catalina API. And if you can see here, server, CT Dynamics SL Web API, financial, accounts receivable, customer, and then cust ID. And if you can see, things that are in brackets, those are variables, things that get replaced by our script. So in this case, what we want to do is take a customer ID that's coming from a client, so say a mobile app or something like that. It's sending, hey, I want this customer ID, and this is the customer ID that I want to receive. So what we're going to do is replace this bracket, cust ID bracket, with the actual customer ID we want to search for. Let me go ahead and put in basic authentication. Let me just put in my authorization, and site ID is really a configuration key that tells the API for SL what database information, what configuration keys, and all that stuff to take a look at. And company ID. SL is a multi-company, so we can go ahead and at each API call, we can go and define which company we want to deal with. And let me do that. So now I've got what I want to retrieve. And now let me put in a simple default script. So if you remember the external URL, I'll pull that up real quick. And if we look at this, we have a variable name called cust ID, so capital C, UST, capital I, capital D. And what we have here is for transform external URL, which is a function call. We have that exact spelled variable name. And what we're going to do is we're going to take what's in the body of what the client is passing, and the client's going to pass an object of data, and in that object of data there's going to be something that's called cust ID, and I'll show you that in a second. And then we don't really care about the original URL. Original URL is really where we go ahead and push data to another location. So if we went ahead and retrieved data from a location, so say we retrieve this SL customer, we could then receive that into ctIntegrator We then can transform it, and then we can post it back out to, say, Salesforce or Dynamics CRM or whatever. We're not really worried about that because we just want the data to come straight back to the client. We don't want it to go anywhere else right now. And then what we're going to do is with this transform is transform will then take that the data that came from this external object call, which is retrieving customer, and it's going to just pass it back to the client. So let me just save it. And if you notice, it created this script ID. This script ID is going to be a unique identifier. So now what we've done is we've really created a custom API endpoint that will call another API call and then transform it. So you can go ahead and then do whatever you want with that data that's going to come back. So in this case, we're just going to be passing back exactly what came from SL. So we'll use the script ID in a few seconds. So let me go to Postman. Postman is nothing more than a client for APIs. And what this will do is it allows me to easily test my API as if it was, like, say, a mobile app or a web site or something like that, to be able to go ahead and retrieve and update data. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to be calling ctIntegrator. Let me go back here. I need this script ID like I mentioned. And I'm going to push that. And we're going to say we want to run that script. And let's put in some authorization. So now this is not the ctAPI or the Catalina API for Dynamics SL, but this is for ctIntegrator. And we're going to do this as a post, and we're going to create a body and make that JSON. So what this body is this is what the client is going to send. And if you remember, our script is expecting cust ID to come through. And what it's going to do is it's going to take the value of cust ID, it's going to put it into the URL so that it can then retrieve the data. So let me just go ahead and hit send. And there we go. You can see here we've got all this data. And this is lots and lots of data. So that's handy if this is the way you can handle your data, or if you've got ways to do coding on the client side to convert the data into formats that you want to do. But what if you can't? And so that's where the Catalina API or ctIntegrator can come into play. So now let's say I want to change this. Let me just put this up into full screen. And let me go ahead and make a change here. I'm going to create a new object. And let me just say is okay, so what this does is this allows me to then create a whole new object and make it a lot simpler. So I'm just, say my client is really expecting a simple object with the word customer, and that's where the customer ID is. So instead of sending the external object, I'm going to now send out the transformed object. And if I go ahead and then hit save, now let me go back to Postman and hit this. Now you can see instead of that big object, I'm bringing back a custom object that is exactly what I want, just customer and with the C300. So now let me go a little bit further, and let me go back here, and I'm going to do something a little fancier, and let me just cut and paste this. So now what I'm doing is let me grab this again. Typos and all. Okay, so now what this does is I'm doing a little bit more. So I'm still putting cust ID into customer, I'm also grabbing the current balance, and in SL it's called CURRBAL, and it's in balances, and I'm putting this into a variable called current balance, and then I'm creating an address. And out of this address, what I'm doing is I'm doing address 1, carriage return, address 2, carriage return, city, comma, space, state, space, zip. So I'm just bringing it down into a single field. So let's say my mobile app is expecting everything to automatically come into a single field. So that's what I'm doing here. Also, I've got a Salesforce ID. I've got user 1 in my customer. I'm storing a cross-reference to Salesforce. So I want to go ahead and have something that's called Salesforce ID. And then I'm doing something, hey, I want to go and do my customer ID plus customer name. So I created a field for that, and I'm putting customer ID, and then I'm putting a colon and then a space, and then the name. So something pretty simple. I'm going to hit save. Now let me go back to Postman and see what happens. So now you can see I've got a new object, and I've got all this new fancy thing. So what I can do using ctIntegrator is not only with the Catalina API for Dynamics SL, but any API really. We've been doing this with CRM APIs, with Salesforce APIs, with ServiceMax or whatever. But regardless of what API it is, we can make a call to an API and we can transform it so that the data comes back in a format that you want. Okay, so what we've shown here is we can go and set up a script and be able to take data from an existing API and transform it. And in this case, we're making kind of a special customer and address type line. But say we want to go ahead and save things for future use. And the great thing about ctIntegrator is you can do that. So I don't want to have to bring back all of this data, and I don't want to have to set up it to call an API because I've already got a script out there that does that. So I can just go ahead and click on Insert Script, and I can choose one of my existing scripts. I'm going to get a customer. So it's just an existing script out there, and I'm going to then bring that back. So let me do var. We'll do this. And then let's go ahead and bring the body object. So what I'm going to do is take what's being passed by the client, and then I'm just going to send that to an existing script, and then let that bring it back. And so then from there I could customize it as well. So let me save that script. Then let me go to Postman and run it. So now that existing script is bringing back all the data, but I didn't have to go and do any kind of setup. I'm just using an existing script to be able to do that. So if that existing script did this custom, then it would be, then that custom script would then bring back in a custom method, and then I could further customize it and then also even post it out to another API, like say a Salesforce or Dynamics CRM or something like that. So it just really makes it very easy. Another use for these things is for being able to loop through, say, line items. So if I've got, say, a sales order, and then I've got line items, and I need to go ahead and call a script for each specific line item, I can go ahead and loop through all the line items for that. And if you can see, I've got one for project, and that's not the one. Let me see. Project, process tasks. So if you can see here where I'm going through each task that's stored in the in Dynamics SL's project, and then I'm making a call to a an API call that then sends that task out to Salesforce. So that way I've got a project, and then I can create a task entry for each one of those. So it just gives you the ability to be able to really kind of componentize your code and be able to customize things. Okay, to finish up, what we've done today is show how Catalina Integrator can call Catalina API for Dynamics SL to retrieve or post data in a customized way. We can also call any other API, whether it's Dynamics CRM, Salesforce, Shopify, ServiceMax, whatever. We can call other APIs to be able to go and retrieve, send, and transform data in between. And we can also customize and transform your APIs to suit your needs. So when we say retrieve data from Dynamics SL through the Catalina API, that's going to come back in a certain format. But if you use the Catalina Integrator, you can then go ahead and transform that into a format that, say, Salesforce.com can understand, or that that your client, your mobile app can understand, or whatever. So we can go ahead and transform data before it ever makes it out of a server and goes out to your client or gets posted back to some other API. And we can also reuse code by creating a script library. So if you've got common bits of code, like being able to retrieve customers, or say you need to be able to loop through data and call a common bit of code, like say to insert a project task to a project, then you can reuse code by using these script libraries. So if you've got any questions, I know this is kind of confusing, but it's a real important thing to be able to transform data without having to write a lot of code and be able to have you don't want your code distributed all over the place. We can go and centralize your code and your transformation scripts into a single location called Catalina Integrator. If you've got any questions, feel free to look us out at www.catalinatechnology.com. And you could also reach us at sales, S-A-L-E-S, at catalinatechnology.com. Thanks a lot, and look forward to talking to you soon.